Hey Beulah young adults, welcome back to another episode of our Ask Us Anything series. This is part 2 where Stu and Neil sat down to answer some tough questions around faith, unity, race, and intimacy within dating relationships. So without further ado, let's jump right into it.
Hey Neil, so good to jump back in again with you, and I got another good question for you.
Absolutely.
So thanks for continuing to stick with me here in that way. So relationship question.
All right.
We've just talked last month with Andy Steiger about the question like, hey, is it okay to go on vacation with your boyfriend and girlfriend? And Andy set us up with a lot of good wisdom. And in a nutshell, like going alone or being alone with anyone, like, or being alone with your boyfriend and girlfriend, whether it's away somewhere or in a basement or whatever it may be, is not a good idea. But there's some circumstances it's okay to go on vacation with your boyfriend and girlfriend where it may be like, hey, I'm going to go with her family, or she's going to come with his family in that way. And there's just a safe environment in that way. So this question continues on in that same kind of vein and setting. So the question that we received is, what form of intimacy is all right before marriage?
I think that's a great question, Stu. And, I think it's a real question. Let me just reframe something, because I think it's important when you receive a question or when you're asking a question is to find out the underlying question beneath the question.
Yeah, that's great.
And I wonder, and I don't know if this is the context or not, but I wonder if the question is more of how far can I go until it is wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I guess what I'll do is I'll answer this in the form of a real life relationship.
Yeah.
Because we have a relationship with God. I think that's important to answer it that way. What if I were to say to my wife, what is inappropriate for you that would hurt you in terms of my relationship with my female friend outside of our marriage? Could I go to lunch with her alone? What if it was at the keg? What if it was the one by the fire? Could I go for dinner with her? Could there be candles at the table? Could there... Right? Oh, It was Valentine's Day. Could I give her roses? Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
How far it would, first of all, it would be incredibly hurtful if I were to ask my wife and push those limits with her, right? The answer would be obvious. And so in terms of our relationship with God, when we talk about, how far can I be intimate with my partner is what we're really trying to say is, God, how far can I go in our relationship and my relationship to you before I hurt you?
Yeah.
And if we're walking through life and walking through our Christianity and our relationship with God that way, it would be like me walking in my marriage with my wife that way.
Yeah.
Are you sure? No candles?
Yeah.
Is this okay? Is that okay with her?
Yeah.
Is that? Well, no, it's not. It's a covenant relationship. It's exclusive. And so our relationship with God needs to be viewed in that way. And sometimes I think we forget that, and we want to just skate as far to the edge as we can so that we know we haven't crossed the line and burned or hurt anybody. So it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you coming at it from the angle of going, without knowing who asked this question, you were trying to deal with the things underneath that. And we sometimes in these kind of questions, it's like, tell me the line so that I know I won't cross it, right? And there is clear lines in a dating relationship. Don't be sexual with one another, and it's not just don't have sex. There's other components to that there's a boundary set up. But I know for some people, like, passionate kissing is crossing the line for them because they're just arousing something that they can't continue on in that way. But for someone else, they could be a little bit passionate in the kissing, and that's not going to push them too far in that way. So I think with lines, it's difficult, right? Because
it is.
What could be a line for you could not be a line for me, and vice versa in that way. So I like that you went underneath the question and you gave some good examples of that. So like, what is a biblical passage that you think about that someone watching this, listening to this, to go like, man, like just take me to the Bible, take me to what God is setting up for us to be able to have this conversation here.
Yeah. A few off the top of my head. In the book of Songs of Solomon and Ecclesiastes, very, very loving, very intimate, physical, intimate book, right? So Solomon, though, the wisest man other than Jesus, he said, "Do not awaken or arouse love before its time." And I think that's to say, not only do you need to guard your heart and guard what is sacred, but using your body as a living sacrifice, holy and presentable to God. So when you awaken love and you arouse one another, okay, in a physically intimate relationship, you're awakening something and you're opening something that you may never be able to go back to. And when you, in all fairness, here's what I would say. It is natural for you to want to, okay?
Yeah.
If you didn't want to, I would say there's something else going on.
Something going on,
okay?
yeah.
God made you that way.
Yeah.
But he also wants you to guard it. He also wants you to awaken it at its proper time. And yes, it is to protect you, but it's also so that you could truly enjoy that covenant relationship in the containment of marriage one day. And if you cross all those lines before that time, what does that say about other lines you'll cross in other components of your marriage and your life? So it's not just drilling down on, hey, no
right.
sex, right? Like we treat it like that. God's not looking at just that one thing.
Yeah.
He's actually looking at your whole life.
Yeah.
And what is to come. I'd also throw this in. It's natural to want to, and it's natural for a relationship to progress. But if it progresses past those boundaries and those lines, which you'd already mentioned, your boundaries might be different from her boundaries. Her boundaries might be different from his boundaries. You better talk about drawing that line and come to an agreement in the beginning.
Yeah.
So you both have a reference point, because those lines and those assumptions might be made. And it's really hard to back up the relationship once you've crossed those points of progression.
Yeah. That's good, Neil. Like, before we jump, I want you to get to really practical stuff, like, hey, like, don't hold your hands underneath a blanket, whatever it may be, sure. Like that kind of stuff. But before we go there, I'm thinking of the person, maybe the person that asked this question, but really anyone that's in a relationship and they go, we have gone too far. Like, we have crossed our line in that way, and whether it's sex or not sex, but we're listening to this, we hear you go like, man, we need to create a new line. Like, what do you say to that couple or that individual that's listening to this and go like, my ex girlfriend or boyfriend, like, we did this, and my next relationship, I don't want to do that. Like, what's the encouragement? What's the how do you respond to them?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, and there are cases all over like that. And what I would say there is, that's the beauty of the God that we know. He doesn't taint you forever.
Yeah.
What he says is, my love for you is eternal. I died for you and those violations that hurt me. As a matter of fact, I died and I loved you so much and I died for your sins. All of those, including these ones, sexual sins, before you had even received me. We think that, I've accepted Christ. It's like we're the ones accepting him. Yeah. It's actually quite the opposite, Stu. The gospel is God loving us.
Yeah.
Okay. God receiving us.
Yes.
Right. It's so opposite. And so I would say, Stu, guys, when you mess up, and we all have in multiple areas of living, that's why Jesus died for us.
Yeah.
He had died to forgive you and I, to take us to eternity. We believe him for that, but we can't believe him to forgive that one sin or that one line we crossed. I'm not minimizing it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, look, he died for that. Come to him. He is gracious. He can redeem. He can forgive and will, because he promises to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. If I can piggyback off the back of what you was just sharing, going like, God doesn't like what happens. Doesn't like that you are rebelling against his good boundaries and provision for you. But just because you may have screwed up or messed up in this moment, or even in something else that is not connected to sexual sin, does not remove that he doesn't want us to come to him. And that Romans 5:2, I believe it says, like, that it's his kindness that leads us to repentance. So when we do come to him and we're asking for forgiveness, it's not a smack of the hand. There is discipline and consequences that fall out from things, but it's in a moment of grace, and we come to him asking for mercy, asking for that compassion. He goes, I forgive you out of my character in that. And man, if we can talk more about that, like from what you just shared, the gospel of that Jesus has died for our sin, and that he's able to overcome all of it, not just like the big things in life. Like he can overcome all of our sin and has done that. Then, man, if we can embrace the gospel more in our lives, we're gonna consistently come back to him when we do sin. But we're also gonna go, I don't want to sin.
Right.
Because I know who God is, and because of his kindness, it's going to make me want to obey rather than go, well, because he's nice, I'm going to keep on disobeying. Like it does a reverse effect in that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, as we close this out here, Neil, like super practical, like as much as you can think of, don't share a blanket with one another, or like keep your hands above your head or at all times, or like whatever it may be. What is your practical advice to a couple so that they can refrain from going too far, essentially?
Yeah, that's a tough question, because you can become very, like what you just mentioned, no blanket, no this, no that. And I think those are practical. But if we push the limit on this hard, it can get to a point where, look, we're all, as you're dating, I hope you're all adults, and nobody can monitor and police you 24/7. So where does the practicality come to help move you to honoring boundaries or not doing something? I would argue you both need to lay down the foundation together and individually as people in your love for God. Here's why. Your love for God and your wanting to honor and please God will come from that relationship, because sexual intimacy before marriage and crossing these lines could hurt you and also hurt God in the relational context. You would continue to want to honor him and please him and live in obedience to him out of that love and thanksgiving for what he's done.
Yeah.
That is going to be the foundation for how you live.
Yeah.
Right? Because what do you want? You want 101 rules on what not to do, and the truth is, I can do that. But the problem is, you're probably not gonna adhere to those things. So drill down on your relationship and your love for Jesus.
Yeah.
He will honor you. He will honor you guys, and like I said, when you cross those boundaries, what other boundaries will you cross later on in your life and your marriage? And so it says so much about who you are and your relationship to Jesus. But a few practical things. Look, we're all adults. Parking somewhere extremely romantic with a view, praying for your city in Jesus' name till 1 a.m. in the morning probably isn't a good idea, right? And we say things like, oh my goodness, it just happened. And we say that with all kinds of sin, okay?
Right.
Oh, it just happened. Well, it didn't just happen.
Yeah.
We can't say, Lord, please lead me not into temptation, but constantly put ourselves in the path and clutches of temptation.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we're setting ourselves up for failure. You even started this this conversation with, you know, that question you guys had answered. Should I go on vacation with my significant other alone, right? It's like, again, you can't do that and go, Lord, I hope during this vacation that we don't cross any lines. You've already actually premeditated and set
Right.
up yourself for failure. I could guarantee that.
Right. Yeah, I appreciate how you tackled all of that to go, hey, out of my love for God, I will love my significant other, and then I'm gonna want to protect what God has given me, this gift in this way.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went into that to go, hey, continue out of my love for this person, because my love for God, I'm gonna protect ourselves early on. Not gonna wait until the last moment and go like, oh, I hope this doesn't happen. But you're gonna like pull the line way back and go, I'm gonna make sure that we don't even get into that situation, which I think is a way, or is a very practical way of showing that I love God and I love my boyfriend or girlfriend in this moment, to go, we're just not even gonna put ourselves in that situation. And I'll close with this. I have some friends back in California, and they got made fun of for so much that they would never be alone together.
Okay.
And they actually never kissed until their wedding day.
Wow.
In that way, which is like unheard of these days. But I respect them so much, because the beautiful gift of sexual intimacy, they protected that. And that is a weird thing to do these days, but they knew that they could easily fall into it. So for them, that's what they needed to do. And it's not that everyone needs to do that, but you got to know yourself enough to know what you need to do in that way. And you've beautifully guided us to be able to come to that point, Neil.
Stu, I love that illustration and that real life story about your friends. Could I make one closing comment?
Yeah, go for it.
Related to that? What those two did, I think, as you shared that, the people who are listening to this want that. They deeply want that in their heart and their mind. And so you should. It is honorable. Now, however you guys do that, here's what I would say. When those two that you mentioned, when they struggle in their marriage, and they won't move into a level of hiding behind thoughts and previous thoughts of any sexual intimacy with any other partner.
Yeah.
He will not go, oh, I'm mad at my wife, we had an argument, I'm going to now move into a hiding of sin, and where I'm going to go is to that dark crevice that I've allowed in my life years ago with so-and-so, because she accepted me, my wife doesn't.
Yeah.
And sin has a way of causing us to run and hide, just like Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
And our hiddenness will be from our partner to previous experiences we've had with other partners. That's dark.
Yeah.
God doesn't want that for anybody.
Yeah.
And if you've been there,
Agreed.
God will forgive that. He'll redeem that.
Yeah.
But now you know the heart of God. He doesn't want you to hide from him, and he doesn't want you to hide from each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Neil, so much for your response and walking us through that, and being able to just guide us through biblically and practically and really showing God's heart and behind this question here, that it's a good question for us to talk about, but you really have drawn God's heart out of this now. I'm so thankful for this conversation that we just had.
Thank you.